Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone across the globe. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Art and Science of DevOps Coaching. My name is Marian. I'm your committed host, bringing valuable experts to the table in order to explore the world of digital transformations, lean, agile practices, and DevOps culture. And in this session, we will explore customer-centricity, coaching for it, and how to innovate and simplify with DevOps practices. And for the last edition of this year, and this December edition, we have invited these three very experienced guest speakers who are also passionate practitioners and experts in the realm of DevOps and Agile transformation. With your experience, guys, Dinika, Larry, and Nick, we hope to share key insights on how to obsess for the customer, how to coach for customer centricity. And without further ado, presenting our first guest speaker, Dinika van Vliet. Dinika is a passionate Agile consultant and a leadership coach based in the Netherlands, currently working at Quality Accelerators. Her expertise span Agile methodologies, program management, and change management, and some of her extended professional highlights include coaching, consulting, team, and leaders at the municipality of The Hague to embrace Agile practices for efficient value delivery, as well as various previous transformations, just to name a few, ING and Deloitte. Dinika, I was thrilled to learn that you're a renowned guest lecturer for Agile and Lean methodologies at, correct me if I pronounce that right, Hodge School, Amsterdam, Zwolle, and Utrecht?
Yeah. So it's like a university in various places in the Netherlands, yes.
Awesome. So the right mixture of academy and practice. And Dinika is also the author of Understanding the Agile Manifesto, a brief and bold guide to Agile. Welcome to the stage, Dinika.
I have to, those credits are due to Larry. I'm co-author of a manifesto for adaptive organizations.
My bad.
Get the manifestos.
Really, apologies to manifestos, right? My bad. All right. Looking forward to learn more about your manifesto, Dinika, in this session. Next up to you, Larry. Introducing you, Larry Apke. Larry is a seasoned consultant and Agile coach with a focus on VUCA environments and a value delivery expert, currently based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And with over 12 years of experience in Agile coaching, you, Larry, have been a driving force behind various Agile transformations, innovation initiatives, and value-focused projects across various organizations. I was curious to know that you're the Chief Agile Officer of the Job Hackers, or at least were before, a nonprofit providing free Agile training and workforce development to various communities. Mm-hmm. And you, Larry, led also further transformation and transition initiatives on focusing in value, quality, and customer satisfaction. And one of your hustles includes being a principal consultant at VUCA MBA, right?
That's correct, yes.
Where your focus is to help individuals and companies navigate the challenges of the famous or infamous VUCA road. And now, I hope I got it right. You're the author of The Golden Rule of Agile, a focus on value delivery, as well as Understanding the Agile Manifesto that I've mentioned before.
That's correct.
Welcome to the stage, Larry.
Oh, thank you.
Happy to have you on board. All right. And finally, please join me in welcoming you, Nick Jordanov. Nick is a dynamic and accomplished product manager and Agile coach based in Sofia, Bulgaria, who had honed his skills as a delivery consultant for over 13 years in the UK. After working in one of the most foremost Agile agencies in the UK, Nick managed to help clients in diverse financial institutions as well as the government. Then you returned to Bulgaria to co-found a startup in the real estate and mortgage sector. Following a semi-successful exit, I'm curious to know what's semi-successful in this case. Nick joined the global B2B software as a company startup named Scaleflex last year as both a product manager and Agile coach, helping to optimize the delivery pipeline and ensuring the solutions of ScaleFlex integrate seamlessly into their clients' everyday business lives. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you, Marianne. It's great to be here and on board with such great people as well. And to answer your question, semi-successful because it didn't become rich as a result of the exit overnight, much to my chagrin. However, we did manage to secure a good exit with some future possibilities for some windfall. So that's why I'm saying if it pays out in the future, it's going to be fully successful. For now, at least all our investors are happy. They got their money back. So I will chalk it in this area.
All right. Well, I'm sure there are some lessons learned to share with us here, Larry. And coming back to our topic, let's pave the way for the discussion today. We aim to venture into a journey for the next hour that unlocks the true potential of customer centricity within the realm of DevOps, Lean and Agile, infused with a touch of innovation and simplification. And our conversation, as always, is structured around different subtopics, managing to cover the main topic today and to deep dive into key aspect of what we want to check today, customer centricity, and its influence into the real world of business. So our topics for today are coaching for customer-focused team objectives, DevOps and Agile practices to delight your customers, coaching approaches to fostering innovation, and also simplifying customer-facing processes and the value delivery. As always, at the end of the session, we'll have a short survey for you to provide feedback. I invite you all guys that listen and view us here in the show to provide your comments, questions, suggestions in order to shape the future events and also improve the overall experience. And I strongly encourage you to take a minute to complete it. And also throughout the session, please feel free to share your questions via the chat on your right side. Feel free to ask, to seek clarification on any abbreviations, definitions, terms specific that we use during our discussion. Feel free to challenge us with your case studies, with your real life cases. I'm very much looking forward to make this a dialogue as always. All right, so we did the housekeeping, guys. Again, warm welcome to the stage, and let's define what's behind today's topic. And maybe starting with you, Larry, how do you personally understand the importance of coaching for customer centricity?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody who joined us this morning. One of the things that came to mind when I was first asked to do this, why you asked me to do a DevOps thing, because I tend to think of DevOps as kind of a technical thing, and you corrected me, but I wanted to kind of put it in my perspective of where this fits and where DevOps, that term fits into customer centricity and value and other things that I'm interested in. And I thought about, it was Peter Drucker who said, in order to be successful, we got to do the right things right. Meaning we have to choose the right things to do. And then when we do them, we have to do them as perfectly as possible, as optimally as possible. When I look at the concept of DevOps as a narrow piece, I think about that as doing the thing right. And when I look at customer centricity, I look at doing the right things. I think that's a good way for me to kind of explain where my thoughts are, is how do we choose the right things to do? Because it's much better to do the wrong thing, the right things wrong, than it is to do the wrong things perfectly. So as we embark upon this is where I'm going to kind of spend my effort when we talk about customer centricity, is how do we choose the right things to do?
Right, choosing the right things to do. Love it, and let's deep dive later on that. Handing over to you, Dinika, and to kick things off on your end, could you share a personal perspective on what the customer centricity related to DevOps means to you?
Yes, well, thank you for that question. It is my belief that DevOps, like Scrum or Kanban, is a means to an end. So DevOps in itself is not a goal. It is a way for us to achieve something. And with what Larry said, doing the right things right, I believe that in that view, the customer should always be on the top of our minds in everything that we do. It's from the start of the entire process to the end of the entire process that we truly understand what their needs are, what their challenges are, but also what the opportunities are that lie there to be unveiled. Then from a more pragmatic approach, in what I see in the various organizations that I've been supporting, is that we tend to overcomplicate customer centricity. We apply structure in an attempt to have focus. And mind you, the focus on customer centricity, that's something I truly, truly applaud. But what you typically see is that organizations, they tend to start a new department, new roles that are responsible for mapping out the customer journey. The same with functional management, for instance. It's a different department. And what tends to happen is that more often than not, the department, it does its work and it works together in cooperation with transition team, with agile coaches, and with the teams that are actually doing the work itself. So what the consequence there could be is that when we eventually bring the customer journey and the customer centricity to the teams, it's way over their head because it's much more of a process approach. So that's why I truly believe that DevOps has a more holistic approach, in the sense that it truly breaks down the silos, and it truly brings the responsibilities and the mandate to the teams. But with bringing customer-facing roles like product owner and functional management in the teams.
I think you're muted, Marian.
Thank you, Nick. Indeed, I was listening and as always learning. So DevOps as a holistic approach, and also DevOps as a way to break silo to reach the customer faster and better. And back to you, Nick, from your startup experience, what is your definition of coaching for customer centricity?
Yeah, thanks, Marian. I obviously completely agree with Dineke and Larry. And another way to say doing the right things right for me is actually focusing on outcomes over outputs. Right, in the IT industry, we're always too bogged down or focused on just doing things, just putting out feature after feature or functionality after functionality, never stopping to ask actually what's the impact. And I think that's the difference with customer centricity. One example I like to use is that of a SWAT team in a hostage rescue situation. What does it matter if at the end your SWAT team tells you, by the way, we fired so many bullets, we knocked down so many doors and killed a few baddies, threw a few grenades, and then, okay, what about the hostages? What about the hostages? They died, but we did a lot of stuff. So it's about making sure that you save the hostages. And then how do you, help and coach for that? For me is creating a culture of this type of a SWAT team mentality and always asking, so what? I need you to do this functionality. And the right answer or question from the developer should be, why? Why should I shoot a bullet or knock down a door unless there is a good reason, what I'm trying to achieve and solve a problem. That's it.
Right. I love your metaphor. So when I'm with customers now, from now on, I will think of saving the hostages, right? Don't shoot at them, save the hostages. All right. Well, for our viewers, with these definitions, I hope that we defined the topic and we've set the frame of what is customer centricity for us. If not, again, feel free to use the chat. Feel free to challenge us if there are some misunderstandings or clarifications needed. But otherwise, I would suggest to move with our first subtopic. And this is coaching for setting up team objectives that are focused on the customers / the users. And back to you, Larry. Could you provide a specific example of how you've optimized the flow of value within a team using prioritization strategies?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that question because it leads right into me plugging my recent book, Apke's Golden Rule of Agile, because the Golden Rule of Agile is simply this: we deliver the optimal value to our customers in the shortest time possible. And when I put that together, I was trying to come up with something that kind of took all the 4 values and 12 principles and kind of put them together into one thing that is a little bit easier to remember, because 4 values and 12 principles, that's a lot. We didn't do so well with 10 commandments, so we came up with the golden rule. So I mean, 10 was too much, 16 is way out there. But the real question is, we use the word priority a lot, and words do matter, and I don't want to be the word police here, but the connotation and the denotation of words is important. Priority tends to be, this is what the business wants, this is what the customer wants. It's not always the right thing to do, because sometimes the customer doesn't always know what's right. Sometimes the business will say, hey, we have to jam this feature out, and they forget about some of the back end things that we need to do, some of the technology, some of the security, some of the things that might get us in trouble down the road. So we have to balance everything that we do through the lens of value. And so what I've come up with, which I'm not unique in this, is a very simple process actually by which we do take everything that we could do for our customers that sits in the backlog. This is simple backlog management. We take everything and we value it, and we do it relatively speaking. We say, hey, here's this thing we could do, here's this thing we could do, which one's more valuable? And then in the end, what you do is you can do sticky notes, or now we use virtual stuff, and you put them on the board, and you have things, you start putting them in columns, you start putting numeric values to them, because you know the relative value of doing one thing versus another. And obviously that needs to be from the long-term lens of the customer, right? And then you do the same thing with the effort. What would it take to extract that value? And then you take that ratio of value to effort and you sequence the work in that ratio based on your constraints. That's the whole thing. And so when you're done, what you've done, I mean, obviously we could be wrong about our assessments, but when you're done, you have a sequence of events that would deliver the most value in the shortest possible time given our constraints. And you know that this is mathematical. This is not something that we're making up here. Again, assuming our assumptions are right, which they're not always right. And that is really important. So instead of the word priority, I guess the long story, make the long story shorter, is I use the word sequence. We can only do so many things at a time.
What do you mean by sequence here, Laurie?
I mean a ranked order. When you look at your backlog, and I have number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I could only do one thing before I die, it's number 1. If I could only do 2 things, it's number 1 and number 2. Right. And we focus on delivering and getting that value actually completed and through the system to our customers as quickly as possible, as opposed to having a lot of work in progress. And there's a whole bunch of other things to do. But focus, Deneke was talking about focus too, focusing on the value pieces and only the value pieces. It doesn't necessarily mean we understand our customer. There's other things we need to do. But this is such a hugely effective technique that it's probably, in my training and the work that I do, it's probably the most effective thing. It is something that we all can do. You can do it with any list. You can do it with any backlog. You can do it in your personal life. You can do it in professional life. It's how do we guarantee we're delivering the most value in the shortest time under our constraints? And this does it. So I'm really excited about that. So when you use the term priority, I'm going to just say sequence. And I think that's really important to emphasize here.
Right. All right, Larry. And listening to you, I have I'm curious about something. We often assume that faster means more value. Have you had any experience where that's not the case? And I'm thinking about something very pragmatic here. Christmas holidays are coming, and sometimes I would like to know that there is a hotel booking in 3 weeks, and that there is also value in waiting and anticipating this joy. Is that applicable to the product world, to IT as well?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, we always lament places becoming feature factories. I think that's the one thing I said. Everything that we could do needs to be balanced over a longer term understanding of delivery of value. So you could have computers do this. You could have AI do it. I don't think so. We don't want that. You have human beings doing it because human beings have to make those decisions. They have to make that balance of deciding, do I want to actually release this? Do I want to put it in my customer's hands now, or do I want to put it in my customer's hands later? But I think a lot of us are familiar with the Microsoft study where I think they found it was like 1/3 of all, or 2/3 of all features are rarely, seldom, or never used. So why do we deliver them, right? Because we feel like doing something is valuable. We live in this VUCA world, and we live in complexity where inputs, and this gets back to something Nick was talking about, outcomes. Inputs and outputs are not linear. If you're digging ditches, the more work you do, the more value you're going to deliver because it's a purely physical thing. But when you're in the world of knowledge, of intellect, you can do small things that have a great return, and you could do a lot of effort on something that has a very small return. This is the point I'm trying to make with the sequencing. Let's identify those things that give us a huge return, an asymmetric payoff. And let's make sure that we do those things and concentrate on those things. In the end, you're actually going to deliver probably fewer things, but you're going to deliver things that are more wanted, and you're going to deliver them with higher quality, because you're going to pay attention to things like security, which a lot of folks don't do when they're just throwing out features. You're going to pay attention to these DevOps things. I'll give you a metaphor, and I want to hear some of the other folks talking too, because I'll talk a lot at occupational hazard. But I want to think about DevOps as kind of like a roadway. If you're delivering packages down a rickety 1-lane road with a bridge that's about to collapse, that's what a lot of folks do. It doesn't help to try to deliver more packages. What you should do is concentrate on creating a larger road, creating more lanes, and making a better way and a better means of delivery. So these are the things that need to be weighed, they need to be sequenced, and they need to be focused on.
All right. Well, thank you, Larry. And now, Nick, let us check in. What's different, or what's the same in the fast-paced world of startup and scaled services? Maybe you could share a real-world example where you've applied prioritization practices, and which exactly, to ensure this flow of value from the product team to the end customer / end user.
I think this is what we're doing now in ScaleFlex, actually. I will build on what Larry mentioned and earlier, Dineke, about the focus and the sequencing of the prioritization. I think what's really important is to deliver customer value, but in business context, right? So it's got to make sense for the business. It's got to deliver business value or be aligned with where the business doesn't go. Because as Larry said, you can do gazillion things, right? And a subset of that may have customer outcomes, but only a subset of that yet may also have a positive business impact. So it's all about identifying that, and focus is, in short, being able to say no. And the only way to do this, in my experience, is to be able to set a direction and have everyone in the company aligned to this direction, and compare everything new you have to do with, are we on the right direction? If we want to add something new, where shall we sequence it, as Larry mentioned. The way we do this and ensure that we have our ducks in order, and if we are reusing the metaphor of the SWAT team, everybody from QAs, devs, product managers, sales are aligned and actually are trying to save the hostages. We actually need to define this where we are going, and that for me is having this context of vision, strategy, something that's called a North Star metric, which is a very simple metric to tell you how good your business is doing. And to illustrate it, Spotify, for example, the only thing that matters for them, or the top thing that matters for them, is minutes listening to music, right? If they're growing this metric, which way, right? They know they're making a positive impact, whether it's making the users coming back more often, increasing the time they spent on the app, or acquiring more users. It doesn't matter. The single metric tells you you're moving in the right direction. So it always kind of comes back, and you're able to ask the question: is this moving us in the right direction that we want to go in? And people talk about OKRs, but if they are in the void, one quarter you have one OKR.
What do you mean
the
by
next
avoid
quarter,
here with OKRs?
In avoid without a strategy and a vision or a direction is what I call it. So if you just said, okay, we hear OKRs are great, we're going to set a few objectives for our department, this is what we want to achieve. What I've seen before happen is, they change from quarter to quarter and they're a little bit like in limbo, right? And it's based on what's the most urgent at the moment. And to avoid that, you need a direction. And again, to be able to be sure that you're delivering the right value, you got to be able to say no. So you got to know when you are getting outside of when you're getting these requests. So I would even say filter and reject such requests that are not aligned with what you do. So say in Scaleflex, we are very picky when we're answering RFP. Are they in our strategy? The type of customers we want to serve, the way we want to serve them, where we're trying to get them, the niche that we want to win in, or is this in some other direction? Because if we try to be everything for everybody, we're going to be jack of all trades and no one.
Right.
So this is what
I'm basically choose your hostage crowd, right?
Correct. Are you going to save the hostages in this place? Are you going to, invade Afghanistan and do something else? You have to choose what are you fighting for, and
Indeed.
What you want to then prioritize, exactly as Larry mentioned.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Thank you. And let's give the word to you, Dinika. So specifically on when you coach your DevOps teams, how do you guide them in formulating actionable objectives that are centered around value for customers? What is your secret sauce to
that? Well, I think that Nick just actually said something that really rings true in the sense that he mentioned that management is setting objectives for the department. So in that sense, by the time that you get to the teams, you have to have done a lot of work already, because objective setting is also a cultural thing. And that's something that we, as well, for me, as a consultant, I'm not part of an organization. So I'm not also not part of the culture there. But what I do bring with me is my own view on objectives in the sense that I see them as two sides of a coin, right? So that you have an objective, you have some goal setting, but it's only successful if the recipient of that objective is also happy, right? So like Nick just said, with the Spotify. The North Star metric, like the increase of the number of minutes that people are listening to, that's something that people are actually listening to the music and they're having a good time. Well, at least that's my assumption. That's my personal experience with Spotify. So with DevOps, let's say that the DevOps team releases twice a week as an objective. And if they reach that, but did we check to see if the recipient is actually able to receive something twice a week, like a product owner or a customer or IT management, or is it creating a bottleneck somewhere upstream? Is it creating a bottleneck somewhere else? So that's why we always have to check whether it's a valuable two-sided objective. And also, I believe that there are objectives that are best left fluid, that you don't know yet, but you are on a path to finding out what an objective could be. So take an iterative approach, a more kata-like approach, which is always very funny when you try to do that in a more hierarchical organization, because that's the management and always primary response is, well, that's too fluffy. These are objectives that teams can always reach. So it's, again, really a cultural thing to start with the leadership, with the people in the teams, like a paradigm shift, and to see how it will benefit them. So always ask yourself, how do we know with any objective, and how does the recipient know? always check to see the two sides of the coin. Like as an example, like 2 years ago, it was well, it's still mid-COVID, so we were still in lockdowns, and I started a new assignment, an insurance company in the Netherlands, and we started an experiment. So it was completely new, but this was even though it was a smaller company, it was pretty hierarchical. So just the fact that we were doing an experiment with a couple of teams that were pre-selected, and to experiment, to design, to try out, and to improve the DevOps way of working. So of course, objective setting was also part of the package, and that was a struggle, not only for the teams but for leadership as well, because they still viewed IT as a supply and demand. So that's where you have to start, right? So you have to start building a foundation before you can actually set some meaningful objectives. So yes, it was a struggle. And what my approach then is, it's a long-winded approach. Just take your time, get a smell of the place. So what kind of organization? Is there a lot of hierarchy? What are the current objectives? What style of objectives do they have? And bring people together, like with management, with the customers and the end users and the people in the teams, and then discuss what meaningful objectives could be, and just give it a go and try and inspect in the depth.
What I hear out as well from you guys is basically define the objectives with the team, right? That was a bit also in the subtopic. So coach your team for your objectives. Don't conform to top-down objectives, to top-down goals that were invented in some ivory tower. All right. Yeah, my 5 cents on the Spotify metric. I must do a personal confession. I'm addicted to music, and I was awarded with being top 1% of the Spotify users with 50,000 minutes listened. And I had to almost laugh when you mentioned it, Nick and Lineker, because that's user centricity. You know, they sell to me this metric that I should be proud of, and that was my first reaction. Was like, all right, let's share the screenshot from the app. And then I thought, wait, why is that a good thing for me as a user? But anyway, indeed, great example. And let's move on now. I would like to challenge you to share more and more of your practices to delight customers, right? What worked for you to delight your customers? And Larry, handing over to you. When coaching your teams, what practices do you instill, push, encourage to directly contribute to customer satisfaction?
Well, I think the big one that comes to mind is empathy. You have to have customer empathy. And as I'm listening to other folks talk, I hear a couple of things that I want to bring out and maybe answer this tangentially. But one is leadership, the culture. I hear culture a lot, and I hear something that is near and dear to my heart or around it, which is mindset. There's a huge debate that kind of rages in the Agile community, whether Agile is a mindset or not a mindset. And I'm squarely in the camp that it is a mindset, and I'll tell you why. Because the people who tell me it's not a mindset already have the mindset. They're like fish asking, what does being wet mean? If you already have it, you have this curse of knowledge that everybody has it, but most folks don't. I mean, I go into organizations all the time where they don't really understand that the world is even VUCA sometimes. They don't understand what complexity means and how knowledge work is fundamentally different from digging ditches and putting cars together on an assembly line. These are things that folks need to know in order to be optimal in the world. It's not that they can't be successful in the world. It can't be that you're not selling products, or you're not selling software, or you're not making money. The question is, are you optimal in the world? And the answer for a lot of companies is no. So I think about it in terms of customer empathy. We have to look at it as the customers does. And here's the thing that comes to mind when we talk about stories. I was with a company that did everything through projects, and this is quite common in the world. But projects is a me centricity. It's not a customer centricity. When our customers look at us,
I live through everyday what they call it, customer-facing projects. So could you elaborate a bit more on that, please?
Well, I think a lot of times what we do is we say, okay, here's some things that we want to bring to the customer, but they don't look at it as the customer does. When the customer looks from the outside in, they tend to look at us as products. What do I interact with? I interact with a website. That's a product. I interact with an app. That's a product, right? That's not project. So a lot of what we're seeing as far as success in my mind is to start taking a more customer product centric view of what we do and say, here are our products. So a lot of companies don't do that necessarily very well. They create a lot of small siloed products that have to interact along a very long value chain, as opposed to looking at them as a single entity that the customer sees. This gets back to Dinnicky talking about we've got to bring people together. It's not just bringing people together, it's bringing the things around the value chain together, the things around the product together. So in one of my most recent consultations, we took a company that was all project funding, and we transitioned it to 100% product funding, and we did that within about 7 months. It was the largest, fastest transformation of its kind that I've seen or heard about anywhere. Because we're talking about over $1 billion.
Sorry to interrupt you, Larry, but I'm really curious what this change imply. How do you do it? Like, there were 2 different buckets, right? Project and product, and what happened in between? So you have the S's and the to be situation.
Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to say, what are our products? What are the things that we're building that are being delivered? And then you have to say, instead of we're going to invest in certain functionality or projects. And when we do that, the problem with that, by the way, is we tend to increase technical debt of the products we're creating, right? You don't deliver a project per se. You deliver a project via products. So all the companies out there struggling with a huge amount of technical debt, chances are you're doing it because of the incentives. You're incentivized to create the features. You're not incentivized to create good products. And they sound very similar, so hopefully I won't say the wrong word. But basically, you have to change the way you look at the world. You have to say, okay, we're going to move to a product-centric world. We're going to move from projects and scope-based funding to products and investment-based funding. That's the difference in thought. The question now becomes, I have these 7, 10, 100 products. How much am I going to invest next quarter or next year in these products? And that is a much different way of looking at the world, because when you do projects, you have a tendency to split teams up, move people around. They don't get comfortable with each other, et cetera. When you have products, you have stable teams, you have long running teams, you have people who care about infrastructure for that product. You have less technical debt, you have higher quality. Because again, it's the customer seeing things as products. Now, products can be both internal and external as well, right? I can have a bunch of products that need to be stitched together to create some product that my customer sees. But again, the funding being done this way changes the incentives. And I'm big on incentives because when we talk about the word focus, there used to be this thing saying what gets incentivized gets done. Some folks have probably heard that. That's almost right. I think there's a better way of framing it. What gets incentivized gets focused upon. What gets focused upon tends to get done. It's all about where do we focus our energy.
Right.
And if we're incentivized to focus our energy merely on projects, we're going to create poor products that underlie that system. And the infrastructure is going to be poor. This is where it interacts with DevOps, by the way, because DevOps is about creating the infrastructure that allows us to deliver our products into the market. And the reason that gets shorted very often is because of the financial incentives that are put into place.
Right. So it's about the right funding process, the part of portfolio management that allows us to focus, and also in the end about DevOps practices as well, right?
Absolutely.
And Larry, if you allow me now, I would like to invite Dinika to this discussion and listening to you on a focus. I was thinking about what about customer feedback. So Dinika, maybe you could share an example with us. Which DevOps practices you've been integrating to facilitate this famous iterative, ideally automated feedback loops throughout the value streams of the teams you're coaching for?
Yes, well, thank you for that question, because feedback loops, or just zooming out a little bit, the overall inspect and adapt. For me, they signify the fragility of agility, in the sense that when you look at organizations that have started a transition, are well underway, then typically what you see at a particular moment in time is, for instance, that reviews are being canceled, or are no more than a PowerPoint being sent to stakeholders via mail, or that demos and reviews are just the teams themselves, right? So they're missing out on a really valuable construct of overall agile way of working, which is the inspect and adapt, the ability to become a learning organization and to continuously improve. So this is something that I saw happen at one of the IT department of one of the government organizations that I worked for, and where the teams, as part of the transition, they were formed multidisciplinary teams. They were working together. They were delivering their MVPs, and then once they had completed, it just went over to the next team in the value stream. Reviews were put in the agendas of the stakeholders, and in the beginning all went well, and then it actually happened, and attendance for the reviews started to decline. The discipline for updating and informing the help desk after a release just down the drain.
All right, so it's quite a challenge. What do you do there?
Yeah, well, one of the things is what one would normally do is go after the stakeholders and why are you not attending, etc. So then the general answer is just too busy, and I have to make choices. And then I choose not you, but something else, right? So that's also part of prioritization. But when we looked a bit deeper, then one of the things that we as a transition team as a whole were doing was making a sort of inventory of dependencies. So we sat down with teams and we just wrote down their dependencies, and how many times it occurred, and what the impact of the dependency was, and what the actual dependency itself was. So I use that for these specific teams in this specific area, just to visualize it, to make a dependency mapping specifically for that team. And then the visual was like spaghetti, like this communication, and then there were half-finished products moving from one team to another team, and so the actual root cause, rather than just blowing off the stakeholders, was that the organization of the teams was around technology and not around the product or the service itself. So the team then took that input and they started to shift a little. So they started to shift much more around the value stream of their product and their service. And then you saw the benefits for that as well. And still, it's busy, and still there's a lot of pressure in the calendars for the various stakeholders. but at least now it makes more sense to actually go to one of the reviews to provide the feedback,
Right.
and to make it better. And the really cool thing is that they're now also thinking about conducting system demos on a smaller scale as well. So it's really cool to see.
All right, Tineke. And while I was listening to you about feedbacks and stakeholders, I was constantly thinking about our VIP stakeholder, our audience, and about their feedback. So again, dear viewers, listeners, I'm strongly encouraged to drop your question in the chat. And also now is maybe the time to share with you the survey link so we can receive your precious feedback in order to improve future events. Whew, quite a journey. I would say also looking at the time, let's move on to the next topic, coaching for innovation. And that's a tricky one, so handing over to you, Nick. Can you share your coaching approach you've employed that resulted in a specific example of innovation?
Sure, Marianne, thanks. Actually, I'm going to be a bit controversial here and say that I don't think Agile helps with innovation in almost any way at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Agile is all about de-risking, right? And creating also alignment, for sure. Those are really good things. But as Larry said, it's about doing the things right, usually. And coming back to the customer centricity and finding out how you're going to do the right things, even with the prioritization, that's good. But when it comes to actually innovating something new, something that you haven't been just told, what do you do, right? What is the technique that Agile employs? And I haven't seen one. I'll be happy to hear if anyone has anyone to share. So we actually, in ScaleFlex, we borrow something for product management practice, which is called outcome-driven innovation. And it's...
What is outcome-driven innovation? Please elaborate.
Yeah, of course. I love the acronyms and the fancy names. It very simply put is understanding your customer in detail, like what they need to achieve in low-level detail. Exactly as Larry said, through empathy, for example, how do they need to deliver their own, if it's B2B, deliver to their customers? What steps do they go through that? If it's a end user, what steps do they go through to achieve whatever they want to achieve, whether it's finding an apartment to buy, purchasing anything online, whatever it is, and breaking that down in steps, and identifying at each steps where are the challenges and where are the opportunities, things that are not working well, wherever there's friction, and then ideate solutions. So you definitely need space for this. You definitely need brainstorming for this. I don't think Agile stipulates, and now we have a brainstorming sprint. So you need to actually fit that in some way or another. And I find that, as Larry said, empathy is absolutely crucial here in terms of the team. So do your engineers understand the customer problem in depth? It's not just management that has to understand it, right? You actually have to bring developers in on these feedback loops that Dineke was saying, so that they actually get to understand the customer's pain, the context, what the real situation is like, what the real problem is like, and then get them to help you ideate solutions. I think the biggest guru in the product management, Marty Kagan, said that if you're using your engineers for coding, you're only getting half their value, right? And also you're not creating the necessary alignment. So is what we do. As an example, in ScaleFlex, we are serving a big e-commerce customer online who we found out through doing this exercise that they spent an extraordinary amount of time to identify whether each of their products that they're selling has a picture of the product itself and an application of this product, right? So does it have them all? Is it the right pictures? Every day, loads of time spent. So we came together with our data scientists to find out if we could do something for them and automate this, especially in this age of AI, right? It's completely obvious that a computer should be able to solve this. The good thing here is that we actually use the customer's data. So we define an algorithm using customers' data, bespoke solution for this customer with incredibly high rate of accuracy as a result, and completely automated this a way of actually saying, yes, this picture is a product. For this product, this picture is application of that product.
Right. And Nick, we have a question from Pietro. Do you refer to this book, What Customer Want, using outcome-driven innovation to create breakthrough products and services? Is that what you mean, where the concept comes from?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. That's right. I think it was Uwik that was the author, but I don't remember the authors anymore. He talks about jobs to be done, and that is the process that's kind of followed there to then dive deep and understand the issues that the customer is facing.
We will also make sure this recommendation is included in the key takeaways that we share afterwards, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And maybe fast forwarding, we're kind of running out of time. So wrapping up with one last question to you, Larry. And it comes from your VUCA expertise, right? So these complexities this abbreviation, these aspects of modern world drive the complexity in software development and operation. So coming back to simplicity, coming back to simplifying value delivery and processes, how do you ensure you instill simplicity in your teams when they deliver value?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways. When we talk about complexity, and Danica was talking about it too, we're talking about feedback. In order to be successful, or as successful as we can be in the VUCA world, we need to make sure that we have feedback. So when folks, I'm not saying that this is the only way we can do it, but a lot of folks talk about Scrum, they talk about sprints, etc. I want people to kind of think about Scrum in this way. What Scrum has done is really actually ceremonialized feedback. And that's all it is. If you look at all the events and ceremonies, or whatever we're calling it today, doesn't matter. That's just feedback. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to correct course. Because I would say that if I could give you one superpower today, it is, in this VUCA world, assume that you're wrong. Because if you assume that you're wrong, you're going to put in place the things that will verify whether you're wrong or not. This is what we're missing in kind of the waterfall world. And waterfall works in the complicated world. Waterfall works in the simple world because you don't need those feedback mechanisms all the time. You can come up with a plan and you can execute that plan and it's going to work. It doesn't work that way in the VUCA world. We have to be able to change based on our circumstances. The world is constantly changing. You have players who are constantly changing. You have competition. It is VUCA. So we need to make sure that we have these feedback mechanisms built into what we do. And the other one is, I want to get to customer centricity real quick. I teach a class on this, by the way, called the VUCA MBA, so you can look that up, and Jessica put it in the comments. But the empathy is that we have to get feedback, therefore, from our customers. The one company that does it really well is Menlo Innovations, by the way. They have these things that they call high-tech anthropologists. They go out into the field. They work with the customers. They really understand their problems before they try to build a solution. The other thing I've seen folks do, by the way, is they'll create personas. I even had one company where they created life-size, cardboard cutouts with pictures and everything. It's kind of creepy when you're there late at night. But the key is that you really need to understand what it is that your customer faces so that you're actually building those things. So having that empathy, there's different ways you can get to the empathy. But the thing that I want to really, really emphasize, which has been emphasized before, is build feedback loops into your system that allow you to understand as much as possible the world as it continues to shift. So they have to be fast feedback loops, they have to be frequent feedback loops, and they have to be accurate feedback loops.
Right. Fast, frequent, accurate feedback loops. Strong message. Thank you, Larry. And we're coming to the end. Unfortunately, I have many more questions and also a lot of curiosity. Maybe we'll have a follow-up episode. Let's discuss afterwards. But for now, let's wrap it up, right? We have roughly 5 minutes left. it's been quite a journey. A lot of, as always, I'm taking notes myself. I'm a continuous learner. So warm thank you for generously sharing your wisdom, your experience, your insights. And in order to wrap it up, I would like to invite you, Dinika, to start. To wrap it up. Would you like to be contacted with our guests, and also would you have any recommendations on content, books, podcasts, anything you would like to share with our audience on their coaching journey?
Oh yes, definitely. I would love to have some interaction with the audience, and also what they thought of this live stream and what their thoughts are on the things that we tell them during this live stream as well. And one of the things I would encourage people to do is just have a look at the website, and I think that Jessica is going to share that as well, with a sort of updated version on an Agile manifesto. A year ago, I sat together with a couple of people from the industry, as it were, and we were just debating whether the Agile manifesto was still holding true, or that after so many years an update was required. And there popped out a new manifesto. And we would love, it's a first MVP, and we would love some feedback and have your thoughts and ideas as well.
All right. Thank you, Dinika. Handing over to you, Larry, any recommendations for content, media, books, and also if you would like to be reached out after this talk, and if yes, in what channel?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping maybe we can I have a Calendly thing where people can set up stuff on my calendar. And I see that Jessica's putting it in the comments. So you can just set it up. We'll have a half-hour talk. I have the VUCA MBA, so it's VUCAMBA.com. It's a 3-day training course. The MBA stands for, by the way, Mindset for Business Agility. We're not going to give you a master's in business in 3 days. Sorry to disappoint. That's for companies who really need to get that critical mass of people who understand the mindset behind it. So other thing real quick, I'm the only Larry Apke who's still alive, so I'm easy to find. You type it in the search engine, I'm going to come up eventually. But you can find me on LinkedIn. You can contact me in many different ways. LinkedIn would be fine.
All right. Thank you, Larry. And what about you, Nick? Any recommendations, content, media, books, products, services? And also, how can our guests reach out to you after this webinar?
Sure, I'll start in the opposite order. Please reach out to me via LinkedIn. It is the easiest way, and for me to manage the requests and understand who I'm chatting to, so please do that. In terms of recommendations, I haven't actually prepared a list right now. I can give a few names, but what I really like to recommend is that for me, it's the marrying of product management with Agile that delivers and DevOps practices that actually delivers customer-centric approach to doing whatever we are doing, right? And I found a lot of the things missing in the standard delivery frameworks present there. A few key people to just Google are, especially on Substack, are Leah Tharin. Maybe I will write it down so it is easy to copy. Teresa Torres and Marty Kagan, whom I quoted earlier. I think there was a question about using half the value of the engineers. Marty Kagan is considered the guru in product management, and he really talks about empowering teams to actually be autonomous, and talks about how to get them from being completely dependent on management and without any solution power to actually take them to an empowered state, which from all the research and evidence out there shows much better results for the organization. So it actually makes sense to delegate power to the people in the trenches, as long as they have the direction.
Message. Thank you, Nick. Thank you. And also a few farewell words on my end. That was the last episode of season 1 of the Art and Science of DevOps Coaching. I was honored to share this time with you, Dinika, Larry, and Nick. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner or an enthusiast beginner in the DevOps, Lean, and Agile realm, the journey of growth is never ending. In the meantime, we would like to further engage with you, with our coaching community. If you're interested, please check out the Dazzle DevOps coaching content and training on our website. And you can also reach out to my teammate, Jessica at devopsagileskills.org for more details on next steps on your coaching journey. Let's close, right? Our Dazzle team extends our warmest wishes to you guys, both to our guest speakers and to our audience. May your holidays be filled with joy, and your Christmas be very merry, and your New Year be bright with possibilities. Looking forward to meeting you very, very soon. And until we meet again, wonderful and restful holiday season. Thank you, Danica, Larry, Nick. Pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Thank you.